Hola, señores y señoras y señoritas, especialmente. It's the last one. This is week 18. It's actually well past week 18. My bad, y'all. And I have no excuse. It's not like a wildfire situation or anything. I just didn't get around to it. I sent out the Zoom link to everyone for this final episode, I think Friday. I said I was going to do it this past weekend. Today is Tuesday, January 14th, 2025 now. But I never got around to doing it. Can I stand up and do this? I don't. So I'm trying to dial in my process here as I make the podcast more and more sustainable. Full certification on display. As I make the podcast more kind of sustainable and more, really more than anything, to make it more part of my routine. I've said this 1,000 times. I probably say this every episode, but the first part of the whole Legion of Zoom experience and having, never know if I've like closed the link or not for people to hop on the Zoom. Um, uh, First and foremost is to celebrate something super badass. Mike, our friend Mike McDonald, being coach of the Seattle Sea. But more than that, oh, not more than that. That's first and foremost. Secondarily to that, is I want to get this podcast up and going. I'm not sure exactly what direction it's going in, but I have a general idea. And the only thing that is in anything in life that prevents you from your a dream, an idea to a goal is like constant repetition, the boring shit. Hooking up this fucking microphone, finding the right equipment, figuring out this mic stand, doing any potential research. Honestly, at this point, as far as what as the like theme of these weekly podcasts being the Seattle Seahawks and Coach Mike is football, dude. I'm tired of watching football. If I'm being quite frank, I get obsessed, dude. I have OCD, so I get obsessed with shit. But I get so deep into it, it's not until I think like it comes to an end that I realize that like fuck, man, was I really even into that? And also, I'm disappointed. Seahawks are out of the playoffs. Vikings out of the playoffs. UJ's out of the playoffs. So, but man, I've known this for a long time, and it's been awesome to have this like re-entry back into my childhood through football and the like re-ignition of a dreaming mindset. Excuse me, like a big idea mindset. But I know like football, specifically American football or any ball sport for that matter, is not like where I want to focus my attention. I don't want to become like a football journalist or a sports journalist or something. Anyway, so let's kind of recap where we were. Last time was New Year's Day going down to Legoland. I think the Seahawks were actually still in contention for the playoffs at that point. But a bunch of things happened. I guess it was kind of less likely than I thought. I guess they're fairly well set to make the playoffs, but it was, I don't know. I think a bunch of different factors had to happen, like a number of different tiebreakers eliminated them from the playoffs, which is disappointing. But they end up with a 10-win season. I think that's the number I predicted on the first episode. The most wins by any Seahawks head coach in their first year ever. And then 10 wins just in general, 10-7 sounds great. Also an improvement over last year's team. So all in all, I think an outright success for Coach Mike. Except, as I've also speculated on this podcast before, about halfway through the season, I think the first time I mentioned, I hesitate to even offer any criticism, right? Which like an actual objective analyst would do. I'm not objective at all in this situation. But about halfway through the season, I started seeing that what Mike did with from a personnel perspective, how quickly and easily he was able to move on from offseason signings. The way the offense was sputtering did not seem coherent, seemed much more disorganized, penalty ridden. I like to see the stats on how many penalties the offense generated versus the defense. It seemed to me that offense coordinator Ryan Grubbs was potentially on the chopping block. And that's what happened. He ran his computer up. Anyway, all of this is the studio is in experimentation phase, but I can't do. I don't know. My phone's fucking old as shit. I have the brand new AirPods, but the audio quality on the last few podcasts is embarrassingly, not that I'm like super polished guy by any means, but I at least want people to be able to correctly understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. God forbid, like someone who's English, not their first language, has to listen to that. Anyway, Ryan Grubb got fired, offensive coordinator. Yeah, you could just kind of tell, man. It's like Mike comes from the Harbaugh tree. It's smash mouth, defensive oriented, control the clock football, man. And that was not Ryan Grubb was running a very college oriented spread pass first foremost offense. And they weren't establishing the run by any means. And that's not like complimentary uh to kind of Mike's philosophy of running the team. So yeah, it didn't work out. They fired the dude. As far as I know now, on Tuesday, January 14th, they haven't replaced him, um, or found a new offensive coordinator. I have some ideas. Uh, I know nothing. I think it's more about chemistry, right? And like you have to work with these people 16 hours a day, So I think that's I think performance first and foremost, right? But you also have to work with people. So I don't know these fucking people, but there's a lot of interesting offensive coordinators names out there. This dude Joe Brady, he used to be the offensive coordinator of the LSU. I think would be very interesting. Thomas Brown, the I think he started as like the running backs coach or something this year in the for the Bears, a former running back for Georgia. I think got promoted as the Bears started firing people mid-season, which is like a total contrast to how the Mike situation in Seattle and then the Chicago Bears. That can happen as a first-year head coach, right? It's not just like you're given this talented roster and you're guaranteed to get X amount of wins and things to be harmonious in the locker room. It could be total fucking disaster, and people are head office coordinators are getting fired halfway through the season, and the head coach is getting fired 10 games into the season. So uh, that shit can happen. And anyway, this dude Thomas Brown, then when the firing started happening, Chicago became offensive coordinator, then head coach, and X, Y, and Z. Uh, but um, dude, whoever the fuck the Vikings offensive coordinator is, I think his name's Harrison Daniels or Josh McCown, the quarterback's coach. Although I'm recording this the day after the Vikings just got eliminated from the playoffs, so maybe not. But we'll see. Mike will make the right decision. And be very interesting to see, man. So like once, dude, this team's gonna be good. This team's gonna be good. About the yeah, this team's gonna be a quality squad. I went to the last game. The last game ended up being meaningless, but it was here in Los Angeles. I'd always planned on from the beginning of the season to go to well, I didn't check into football and like have a good back of my obsession radar and like in my mental space of like the five things I think about each day until like close to the start of the season. Uh, like I think during the preseason, and that's when this whole idea for this podcast and shit came initially. Um, uh, but so from then, when like August, I thought, okay, I'm gonna fly for the first game of the season, his first ever game, Mike's first ever game, and then I looked at the schedule, and then I just thought I'll also go to the Rams game, which is gonna be here in LA. We're always gonna play the Rams every year, once in LA. And turns out that game was the last game of the season. And it was appearing during the final weeks of the season that game could have been like extremely significant, like a determinant of who's going to win the division, X, Y, and Z. Unfortunately, before the game, by the time week 17 was over, second last week of the season, uh, the Seahawks had already been eliminated. Um, so I went to the game, didn't have any stakes other than it was for me personally, very meaningful. And obviously for Mike, very meaningful for the team. And the Rams didn't play their starters. Well, they struggled to get the W, unfortunately. Got to see Mike after the game. First time I've seen that dude since I was drunk as fuck at whatever the horse race in Baltimore is. So it was very good to see him and saw his older sister who I hadn't seen since our childhood. And I remember from our childhood and her husband and their son, Mike's nephew, and got to hang out with them underneath the stadium, wherever the fuck we were in some weird, bizarre area of SoFi Stadium, um, for a little while and just catch up before they had to hop back on the plane back to Seattle. So it's cool, man. It's beautiful. It's yeah, the whole situation is super inspiring. And although I'm not super hardcore football fan, especially if the Vikings lost last night. Everyone's lost. I am very excited to next season, and at least in my head right now, preliminarily, I want to do this again in some other form, as far as the Seahawks, as far as following the Seahawks is concerned. And if I'm being quite honest, like I'm excited for free agency, I'm excited for the draft and see how this team builds a roster, but I'm not looking to make it like the weekly focus of my existence, nor if anyone on the Zoom tech group is listening, do I intend on continue to send out the Zoom links after today. For the draft, I want to do draft night again. I did that in 2020 during the COVID draft, and that was super fun. Uh, so I want to do that again. My coach, Mike, was actually on that one of those. I think I did four or like 3 night or 2 nights. I don't remember how many nights of the draft I did. I think I did 2 nights, and he was on one of the nights. Um, so yeah, draft night podcast. I think I will do Thursday. I imagine the draft is late April or early May. Um, Maybe a free agency recap if they make some big signings. But from here on out, let me see, before I move on from NFL and football, Georgia lost. Fucking A. I think the day after I recorded the last podcast, which has also probably dampened my enthusiasm for recording one of these podcasts and why I'm late this week and reneged on my uh, statement that I was going to get it recorded this past weekend. UJ lost, fucking Notre Dame. Disappointing. And then last night the Viking in what was that, the quarterfinals of the college football playoffs. Then last night the Vikings lost the fucking Rams, dude. Uh, in the first round of the wild card round. Motherfuckers. That's super disappointing. Very interesting with Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold balled the fuck out for the vast majority of the season with the Vikings. He showed signs of consistency, and everyone's always it took the national narrative around Sam Darnold till the second to last week of the season to truly buy in. When he like came to the locker room, they lifted him up on their shoulders and shit. Then in the last 2 weeks of the season, he fucking lays two enormous eggs. And there was this massive conversation about will the Vikings resign Sam Darnold, franchise him. That wasn't the plan initially. The plan was that they drafted a first round pick, and Sam Darnold was kind of the bridge guy, but he's been balling out to like top 10 level quarterback, which is a fat, that's a huge amount of money and typically a like nearly career long contract type of thing. You don't let top 10 quarterbacks leave. They don't get the free agency, so, but it's only, a one season sample size. And then, dude, the last 2 games of the season on the road in playoff environments, he blew dick. So it'll be very interesting to see like they keep this. I would have, dude. You asked me 3 weeks ago, 100% they keep this guy around. You have to. Now, I think you let him walk, man. I think you just let him walk and stick the initial plan. Maybe you do the 1 year franchise tag for like $40 million or something, and I guess that's like the only 1 year commitment. But I think the Vikings have a ton of free agents and shit. So it's money you can't spend elsewhere. Um, so we'll see if JJ McCarthy steps in. There's so many questions I want to ask Mike about football, that being one of them. He was JJ McCarthy's coach at Michigan, so he fucking knows if that dude is good. JJ McCarthy is the first round pick of the Vikings this past year, who's supposed to be the future, but blew out his ACL. Sam Darnold steps in and balls the fuck out this season. So Seahawks potentially need a quarterback. Geno Smith is like, he's like, man, they used to call it the Dalton line, right? Like you have to be, it's like average quarterback, Andy Dalton. Geno's getting close to that. I feel like it's fucked up to say because I also do believe in him in a sense, especially like off the field. Like I believe in his commitment. I believe in his leadership. I believe in his work ethic and shit like that. Um, I don't know, man. He's got a huge sample size. It's not Sam Darnold, who's like 27 or something. Geno Smith's my age, like 35, 36 or something. So, you know who he is at this point. So I was wondering if, Mike would give up a haul for JJ McCarthy. If he knows JJ McCarthy, apparently JJ McCarthy, if he were in this year's draft, would be the number one overall pick, or hands down the number one quarterback, which would make him the number one overall pick, probably. And be interesting if Mike would give that up if the Vikings are going to stick with Sam Darnold. So we shall see. Exciting shit to go look forward to in the offseason. Going forward, goal is attainable. Eventually, I want to get into like physics, studying the cosmic calendar, which I have here on the wall, which I've talked about forever. Studying the history of the universe, alternative, traditional and alternative explanations for the origin of the universe. Kind of studying the historical timeline of physical existence as we know it, the historical timeline of planet Earth, and then most interestingly, the historical timeline of humanity. That's that's what I want to get into long term. However, it's going to take me time, effort, and energy to catch up on my research on that. Although, if I had, and I would like to have conversations with experts. I don't want to be sitting here ranting into nothingness, Although, yeah, anyway, perhaps it'll be a mix. But that's going to take time. And all my, not, dude, I'm not a busy guy at all as far as like work, but I do spend a ton of time and energy learning martial arts, and that's like my primary focus right now as far as how I'm using my free time. Um, and it takes a lot of time, effort, and energy. And even like the days after I was out for stitches and being sick, for basically not consistently training for by any means for probably over a month. Uh, and yesterday was my first day back, a full day of training. So that's like hour of yoga, hour of no gi, hour of Muay Thai, hour of gi. And I'm exhausted today, man. Like I fucking pooped. So it's not just pooped. uh it's not just the day, like the time you're actually at the gym itself. It's like, you're moving slow the next day potentially. And obviously injuries. Anyway, got knee in the eye yesterday. Um, so that I'm not gonna have a ton of time, I don't think, to like dig into the literature or whatever. But I'm gonna start transitioning in that direction. But to keep the reps consistent as far as the podcast goes, keep myself consistent as the podcast goes, I want to commit to once a week in a nice new way and more authentic way, quite frankly, as far as the representation of who I currently am, a human being, is following MMA. I fucking love MMA. I've become obsessed with MMA since probably 2019, 2020, especially during COVID. I've watched every UFC event ever. I follow that sport most closely. I'm actively participating in that sport and learning it like in an in-depth way. And the highest expression of that is the UFC and professional mixed martial arts. And so that would be a good avenue to not only keep the podcast consistent and interesting, a path to which to follow. It's also generally who I am, what I'm interested, what I enjoy, what I'm passionate about. And it's an artful expression, in my opinion. It's like, you know, from one way of looking at it, it's the greatest expression of human achievement we have in a way, right? It's physical expression of the self. It's not just like a painting is, or movies are, or music is, or technology is. It's an expression of self at the highest level, and in an art form that is brand new. Like mixed martial arts, just two humans getting together and just scrapping it out without any rules, essentially, is only been around in an organized and professional way since 1993. So it's constantly evolving. New shit's coming around. We're seeing new athletes doing new things, and it's very cool, man. I really love it. I find it very. Most people look at it from the outside, and I used to look at it this way, as like brutal and violent and barbaric and lowbrow, and I understand that. But if you really get into it and learn it, and especially actually practice the art itself, you learn it is so much more than that. It's like everything you love about sports or art of any kind, like in the most real way, that's like ingrained in the physical body and the physical self. uh it's like the greatest expression of heart, of like this visceral soul, heart, spirit, something beyond. It is this purely physical, right here, earthly expression, right, in the physical act of fighting, but it is fueled by something that we truly can't understand or feel or see, as in like heart and soul and spirit. And all sports are that, but this is fighting. So it just is so much more intense and powerful. And yes, it is violent and brutal. And there are aspects of the sport itself, and especially like the corporate side of it and the money driven side of it, that are kind of gross and pro wrestling like. So as far as talking shit and the promotion and the pomp and circumstance, which are all fun as well. Uh, but at its core, it's something really beautiful and profound, and that I'm truly, truly fascinated by, and that I will continue. I'm 36 now. I've been doing it for 2 years, 35, 36. So hardcore, like, is the primary focus of my existence, probably 37, 38, 39. Yeah, at least 3 more years, like hardcore. And then I want to continue to practice forever. But I think 5 years of hardcore obsessive type approach will give me like a nice tool bag to carry on and continue to progress with, like a language, like learning a language, like I like Spanish. I'm fluent in Spanish. It's very rusty now because I don't use it on a daily basis, but I always will have it. I know that. And if I go to Latin America, boom, I'm there, and I have this like foundation of knowledge that can be built upon at any point. I want to be the same way with martial arts. It's not quite there, as it my the language, to continue the metaphor. It's not quite there as it is with Spanish. I'm at a lower level still. So I want to continue to develop that level, so I get that solid foundation. I can keep it with me for life, and most importantly, teach other people about it. So yeah, I think MMA is going to be kind of the goal, is weekly. I'm just going to start with just probably MMA betting. And I'm behind on MMA, right? Because I'm obsessive, and I remember the Olympics and then football season. I'm like a month behind on MMA, and I make a concerted effort like not to check podcasts and the news and know who won. So I'm about a month behind in MMA fights. Tonight, I believe I will watch the last event of 2024. And last weekend, 3 days ago, they just had the first event of 2025. And this upcoming weekend is the first pay-per-view of 2025, which is actually here in LA. So I'm about a month behind the cycle of MMA, the current pace. And so maybe this weekend I'll just hop on and check out the UFC 311 card and throw down and like give my picks and bets. I might do that. And they'll go from there. And eventually I'll be caught up with the news and the kind of all the drama and bullshit of it all. But it's fun stuff, and it'll keep me consistently uh, keeping consistently promoting the pod, producing the podcast. So I'm looking at my window in my neighbor's backyard. Like creating the podcast, posting the podcast, whatever, and it also just be an avenue to talk about life, right? It's not fucking basketball; it's fighting, man. So give me an avenue to talk about life, and then also I'll be training in it. So maybe I'll get a martial artist from my gym or some shit. That'd be more fun. All right, we are about 25 minutes in. I think I'm good, man. I'm gonna leave the link, the Zoom link open if anyone wants to hop in. I don't need to pick up the girls for like another 2 hours. So we'll just leave Zoom open to see if anyone wants to hop on, and I can re-record. But I think that's it off the top of my head. As far as life is concerned, back training. We also are, well, I'm not gonna talk, you know, crazy week in LA. I'll leave it at that. Yeah. And yeah, I will see y'all this weekend. I love you all, or we'll be back on it this weekend. This, man, I fucking need more of like a ceremonial goodbye. Uh, Coach Mike, I love you. I love your family. I wish you all the best. The Seahawks the best. You're true. I've said this to you via text and not to your face, but you're a true inspiration. And it like fills me with energy and joy to know that you're out there doing your thing and living your dreams. And I'm incredibly excited to continue to watch it manifest itself in like reality here on planet Earth. So cool, man. And thank you. And thank you anyone who's out there listening. I love you all. And I will be back soon. Besos.